invested all my savings to rescue my family's vineyard, but they chose my sister over me. You won't believe what my family did to me after I saved everything they cared about. I gave up my entire life savings, $850,000, to save the family vineyard, and they repaid me by choosing my sister as CEO. Can you imagine how that feels? Stay with me to find out how I turned the tables and got justice. Because the truth about my family is about to shock you. The sun was beginning to set as I stood among the bustling crowd at River Edge Vineyard's annual harvest celebration. The air was warm, tinged with the smell of grapes and earth, mingling with the faint scent of freshly baked bread from the food stands. I watched as my father, standing on the makeshift stage near the barn, cleared his throat and began to speak. His voice boomed across the gathering, his words smooth and confident, as always. He looked every bit the proud patriarch of this legacy, but something in his tone felt off today. He was smiling, but it didn't reach his eyes, and neither did my smile. I could barely swallow the wine I was holding in my hand. My stomach twisted in knots as the words he was saying registered in my mind. Today marks an exciting new chapter in our family's legacy. He paused for a moment, letting the applause ripple through the crowd. We're thrilled to announce that Andrea, fresh from completing her MBA, will be taking over as CEO of River's Edge Vineyard. The applause roared louder, clapping and shouting. People were genuinely excited, but I stood frozen in place, my wine glass suspended halfway to my lips. My heart pounded in my chest as the words sunk in. CEO! Andrea! My sister Andrea was going to lead the vineyard. My sister, who couldn't even tell a Cabernet from a Merlot in a blind tasting. My sister, who spent her college years posting glossy vineyard photos on Instagram instead of learning about fermentation or soil composition. The same sister who'd never stepped foot in the fields, who had never worked a single day with her hands, was now going to lead the place I'd worked so hard to save. I looked over at her then, her smile wide and bright as she walked forward, a designer dress flowing behind her like she had stepped out of a corporate brochure. She was glowing with pride, as if she had earned this spot, as if all her hard work, if you could even call it, that had led her here. The applause continued to rain down on her, and I stood there, feeling like I was suffocating. My throat tightened, but I forced a smile. "Congratulations, Andrea," I said, my voice steady despite the ice that had formed in my chest. My mother gently touched my arm, her hand warm and familiar. "Jessica, honey, I hope you understand. Andrea's degree makes her the natural choice to handle the business side of things." I nodded, keeping my smile firmly in place. "Of course, Mom. Andrea will do great." I raised my glass in a toast, my hand shaking slightly as I took a sip, trying to keep my composure. I excused myself from the crowd and stepped outside into the cool evening air. I needed to think. 6 months ago, when my parents called me in a panic, I didn't hesitate. They were about to lose the vineyard. The bank had issued a foreclosure notice, and I was their only hope. I transferred every single penny I had, $850,000 my life savings, into River's Edge's account. I had built my investment consulting firm from the ground up, worked long hours, sacrificed weekends, all while my sister was enjoying a carefree life, the kind of life I could never afford. When my parents called, I didn't think twice. Family meant everything to me, or at least, I thought it did. They promised me that my investment would secure my place in the family business. I had saved the vineyard, and in return, they promised me a future here. But now, as I watched Andrea take her place as the new CEO, I realized just how foolish I had been. All those promises meant nothing. They weren't going to keep their word. My role here was never going to materialize, and I was left standing in the cold, empty space of broken trust. I pulled my phone from my pocket, scrolling through my contacts until I found the name I had hoped I would never need again. Rachel Thompson. I had met her at a few wine industry events, a ruthless corporate lawyer, sharp as a tack, and with a reputation for getting things done. I needed her help, and I needed it fast. I didn't care about family anymore. I wasn't going to let them walk all over me. I texted her, my fingers trembling slightly as I typed, "I need your help with a family business matter. Are you free to meet tomorrow?" Her response was quick, just the way I needed it. 10:00 a.m. At my office. Bring any documentation you have. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. The anger and betrayal ran through me like a current. The next morning, I found myself sitting across from Rachel in her downtown Dallas office, the sun casting a sharp light over her glass desk. The city buzzed just beyond the windows, but inside it was quiet, tense. I handed her the bank statements showing my $850,000 transfer, and she looked up at me, eyebrow arched. "Let me get this straight," she said, her voice cool. "You transferred your entire life savings without any written agreement? Not even a promissory note?" I nodded, feeling the bitterness rise in my throat. "They're my family," I said, the words tasting sour. When they called about the foreclosure, all I could think about was saving our legacy. 3 generations of winemaking about to be lost because they over-leveraged the property for Andrea's MBA and a new tasting room that no one asked for. Rachel leaned back in her chair, considering. "And now your sister is the CEO?" she asked, her eyes sharp. "Yes," I replied, my hands clenched into fists, "and she doesn't know a thing about the business." I felt the walls closing in, the weight of what I had done pressing down on me. But it wasn't over. It couldn't be. My investment, my trust deserved something more than the slap in the face I had just witnessed. Rachel's eyes gleamed as she studied the documents. "This is fraud," she said, her voice low. "But we can make it right. I'll help you get your money back, Jessica. And if we have to take them to court to get it, we will." I left her office that morning with a plan, a way forward. And this time, I wasn't going to let anyone, family included, stop me. I woke up to a string of frantic texts from my mother, all of them pleading for me to come home and talk things through. The messages hit me like a punch in the stomach, and for a brief moment, I almost felt the urge to cave in. But I couldn't. Not anymore. The person I had been, the daughter who had always gone above and beyond to please them, who sacrificed so much, had disappeared somewhere between the bank transfers and the empty promises. I had spent the night after the harvest celebration turning over everything in my mind. The cold truth of it was inescapable. My parents had asked me to save the vineyard. They promised me that my contribution, my sacrifice, would secure me a place in the family business. I believed them. I had no reason not to. But what they had done to me was unforgivable. They had taken my money, and now they were tossing me aside. By noon the next day, I was sitting in a dimly lit conference room in the building where Rachel worked, staring at a pile of paperwork that made my stomach churn. It was all there, every transaction, every little financial detail that showed how they had misused my money. My $850,000 had not only gone towards saving the vineyard, but it had also funded luxuries for my parents and Andrea. The new Mercedes they bought for Andrea. The lavish vacation they had taken to Tuscany last month. The list went on. It felt like a slap to the face. Rachel had me lay out everything I had. She was sharp, direct, and her eyes never left the documents. I knew she wasn't going to pull any punches, and I needed that. After what I had gone through, I was done being nice. The betrayal had cut deep, but I wasn't going to let it defeat me. "You've been more than generous with your trust, Jessica," Rachel said, her voice smooth but cold, like a blade cutting through the tension in the room. "But your family? They've crossed a line. This isn't just bad business practice, it's fraud. And we can use this to make them pay." I didn't say anything. What could I say? It was all too clear. Rachel took a breath and looked at me. "This is how we're going to proceed. First, we'll draft a demand letter. We'll give them a chance to pay you back $850,000 plus 8% interest within 30 days. And when they refuse, She trailed off, letting the silence hang in the air like a guillotine waiting to fall. When they refuse, we'll take it to court. And we'll make them regret ever thinking they could take advantage of you. The thought of going public with this, the thought of putting my family's shady dealings out in the open, made my stomach lurch. But I knew there was no other option. If I didn't do something now, I would lose everything I had worked for, not just the money, but my dignity, my sense of who I was. They had played me for a fool, and I was done being anyone's fool. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with the demand letter Rachel had helped me draft, reading over every word as if it held the power to break me or rebuild me. I had no illusions about what this would cost me. The letter wasn't just a piece of legal jargon. It was a warning that I would not tolerate being disrespected anymore. It was a message to my family that their manipulation had consequences. I took a deep breath and hit send. The next few hours were a blur of emotion. I tried to focus on work on my real estate consulting business that had, for so long, been my escape. But every time I glanced at my phone, my hands shook. I knew the storm was coming. I wasn't naive enough to think they wouldn't react. Around 9 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was a text from Andrea. It was exactly what I expected. "Are you out of your mind?" she screamed through the text, her words dripping with frustration. "A lawsuit? Are you seriously going to destroy everything we've built? You're going to bankrupt us all." I could almost hear her voice, shrill and panicked, as if the world was about to collapse around her. My fingers tightened around the phone, and I shot back a reply. "It's simple, Andrea. Pay me back what you owe me, $850,000 plus interest. That's all I'm asking for. You can keep the title of CEO if that makes you feel better. Just give me what's mine." She didn't respond immediately. For a moment, the silence felt like a trap, like the calm before a storm. And then the storm hit. The next message I received was from my father. His text was brief but charged with anger, and I could feel the heat of his words even through the screen. "Jessica, what are you doing? This is not how we handle things. After everything we've done for you, everything we've given you, you're threatening to tear this family apart?" I read his words over and over, my stomach turning. I had done everything for this family. Everything. I had sacrificed my youth, my personal life, my own well-being to make sure River's Edge remained standing. But now, the only thing that mattered to him was his precious vineyard and Andrea's future. I needed to keep my head. I couldn't let the guilt or the anger take over. I wasn't the one who had started this fight. They were. They had taken what wasn't theirs, and now they were going to have to face the consequences. I called Rachel to fill her in on the situation. She didn't seem surprised when I told her what had happened. If anything, she was pleased. "They're scrambling," she said. "They don't know what they're dealing with, and that's to your advantage. They'll try to buy you off or intimidate you. But stay strong. We're not backing down. This isn't just about money anymore. This is about holding them accountable for what they did." I couldn't agree more. I had been the one who had built my own business from the ground up. I had worked late nights, missed family events, and put in the hours that they had never appreciated. It was time for them to understand that I wasn't just some daughter who could be taken advantage of. The next morning, I woke up to more texts. My father was still trying to talk me down, saying that they could work something out, and that this was just a misunderstanding. I didn't believe him for a second. My mother tried too, asking me to come over for dinner, to talk things through as a family. I felt the tears pricking at the corners of my eyes, but I blinked them away. No more. This wasn't a family matter anymore. It was a business deal gone wrong, and I wasn't going to let them manipulate me any longer. I wasn't sure what they were expecting, but it was clear they had underestimated me. I wasn't going to bend. Not this time. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Calls from my parents, messages from Andrea, all trying to get me to back down. But I didn't. Not for 1 second. I kept my resolve, kept my eye on the prize, the return of my investment, and the justice I deserved. I wasn't just fighting for money. I was fighting for everything that had been stolen from me. Just when I thought I had everything figured out, something else happened that made my blood run cold. They were hiding everything from me, even using my money for their own luxury purchases. What do you think I did next? Do you think I gave up or fought back? Comment below with #1 if you think I fought for what was mine, or #2 if you think I gave in to their manipulation. Let's see who guesses right. The days that followed were a blur of emotions, but beneath it all, a cold, determined sense of clarity settled over me. My family had done the unthinkable, and now it was my turn to fight back. Every text, every phone call from them was a desperate attempt to make me back down, to remind me of the family I had grown up with, the love they claimed we shared. But love wasn't what this was anymore. This was betrayal, plain and simple. I had put everything on the line to save them, and they had repaid me with lies and deceit. No, this wasn't about family. It was about business, about getting what was mine. The first time I received a call from my father after sending the demand letter, I didn't hesitate. His voice was laced with panic, a stark contrast to his usual calm, commanding tone. "Jessica, please. You can't do this," he pleaded, his words rushing out. "You're going to ruin everything. We've worked too hard to let this all go to waste. You've got to understand. We're family. Family." I bit down on my lip to stop the wave of emotion from overwhelming me. Of course, he would say that. He always did, didn't he? When it was convenient, when it was time to take my money and put me in my place, I didn't let my anger show. Instead, I kept my voice steady. "I understand, Dad," I said, the words thick in my throat. "I understand more than you know. But I'm not asking for control. I'm asking for my money back. The $850,000 you promised would secure my place in the business. Not just the business you've run into the ground, but my place. I want what's mine." There was silence on the other end of the line, the kind of silence that speaks louder than words. I could feel his frustration building. I had never heard him like this before, so desperate, so powerless. "We can't give you that," he said, his voice tight. "Not right now. The vineyard's not liquid, Jessica. You know how much we've invested. We'd have to take out another loan to pay you. You're asking me to trust you again, Dad?" I shot back, my voice sharper than I intended. "I've already trusted you with everything. My money, my future, my belief in this family. And you've used it all for your own gain. For Andrea's MBA, for her car, for vacations you didn't need. So don't tell me about trust." There was a long pause, and when he spoke again, his voice was softer, more careful, like he was trying to contain something he could no longer control. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this," he said. "But Andrea's the CEO now, Jessica. It's her turn to lead. She's the one with the education, with the credentials to make River's Edge successful again." I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. "Education? You think a degree from a business school makes her qualified to run a vineyard? She's never even picked a grape, let alone run a business. And yet you handed her everything on a silver platter." The anger bubbled up, threatening to spill over, but I held it back. "You made your choice, Dad. Now it's time to face the consequences." There was a crack in his voice now, a hint of desperation. "Please, Jessica, this isn't the way to handle things. You've always been the responsible one, the level-headed one. We can work this out. Just come home. We can talk. As a family." I took a deep breath, steadying myself before speaking again. "This isn't about talking, Dad. This is about you making things right. You promised me a future here, and all I'm asking for is my investment back. You owe me that." He didn't answer right away, and I could hear the tension crackling through the line. I knew he was thinking about it, trying to figure out how to fix this without losing face. But there was no going back now. I wasn't backing down. The next few days felt like a pressure cooker. Every time my phone buzzed, my stomach twisted with anticipation. My mother called again, begging me to come over for dinner. But this time, I wasn't falling for it. "We need to talk, Jessica. This is tearing your father apart. We can make this work if you just come home. Please." I didn't even bother to respond. What was there to say? They had made their choice, and now I had to make mine. Then, as if on cue, the storm hit. I received a message from Andrea. "You're insane! Do you have any idea what you're doing? You're going to ruin everything. Our reputation, our business. This isn't just about money. This is about the future of our family." She even went so far as to add a string of angry emojis, as if that would make her argument stronger. I stared at the message, my fingers trembling as I typed my reply. "It's simple, Andrea. If you want to keep the vineyard, you return what you owe me. $850,000 plus 8% interest. Nothing more, nothing less." I paused for a moment, then added, "If you think I'm bluffing, think again. I have everything I need to take this to court." It wasn't long before my phone rang again. This time, it was from Rachel. "They're scrambling," she said, her voice laced with satisfaction. "Your family is trying to figure out how to get out of this without taking the heat. But it's too late. We've already got them cornered. Michael's statement, the bank records, everything's in place. You're not going to lose." I felt a rush of relief, but I knew this was just the beginning. The moment of victory was still far off. They were going to fight back. They had everything to lose. But so did I. This wasn't just about the money, it was about making them pay for everything they had taken from me. It was about finally having the courage to stand up for myself, to demand what was rightfully mine. The following days were a blur of phone calls, meetings, and strategy sessions with Rachel. We were building our case, layer by layer, piece by piece. The evidence was undeniable. I wasn't just going to win. I was going to make sure they understood exactly what they had done to me. I had been the one to save their vineyard, and now I was going to make sure they paid for it. My phone buzzed again. It was another message from Andrea, but this one felt different. It wasn't full of rage or threats. It was desperate. "Please, Jessica," it read. "We can fix this. Just come home. This is tearing our family apart." I stared at it for a moment. For a split second, I felt the old pull, the old desire to make everything right. But then I remembered. I remembered how they had used me, how they had lied to me, and I knew there was no going back. No more compromises. I had to finish what I started. I hit send on my reply, my finger trembling slightly as I typed the words, "It's too late, Andrea. You made your choice. Now it's time to live with the consequences." I sat in my apartment, the laptop open in front of me, my eyes scanning the documents. Rachel had helped me gather. It felt surreal, like I was looking at someone else's life, someone who had trusted the wrong people, someone who had been hurt by the very people they had sacrificed everything for. But as I stared at the screen, I realized it was all real. Every page, every word, was a reminder of how much I had given and how much I had lost. I clicked through the financial statements again. Every expense, every withdrawal, it was like a slap in the face. My $850,000 had gone toward the vineyard, sure, but it had also funded trips to Italy, a brand new Mercedes, and countless other luxuries. My family had lied to me, had taken what I had given with nothing more than empty promises. I had trusted them. I had believed in them. And now all I had was this pile of paperwork, a cold, hard truth that none of them seemed willing to face. Rachel was right. This wasn't just about money anymore. It wasn't just about getting my investment back. It was about holding them accountable. It was about showing them that I wasn't going to let them get away with this. I wasn't going to let them make me the villain in their story. They had used me for years, and I had allowed it because I believed in family, in loyalty. But now, as I stared at the evidence of their betrayal, I knew I had to make them understand. The phone rang. My stomach twisted as I glanced at the screen. It was my mother. I almost didn't answer. But I had to. I had to hear what excuse they would come up with this time. how they would try to guilt me into backing down. "Jessica, please," she said, her voice soft but tinged with desperation. "We can fix this?" Your father is beside himself. He didn't mean for things to go this way. I clenched my jaw, trying to keep my composure. I wasn't going to let her guilt me into submission. "Fix this? How exactly, Mom? By letting Andrea keep the CEO position while they keep my money? You've got to be kidding me," she sighed, and I could hear the weariness in her voice. We didn't want it to come to this. "You know that, right? But we never promised you anything in writing, Jessica. We never promised you control." "Control?" I almost laughed. "This isn't about control, Mom. It's about you using my money to cover your own mistakes. It's about you letting Andrea take the reins of a business she knows nothing about while I'm left in the dust, holding the bag. You promised me my place here, and now you're acting like I'm the one who's unreasonable." There was silence on the other end, and I could almost hear her trying to figure out what to say. She wasn't going to win this time. "You're being unfair," she finally said. "This is tearing the family apart, Jessica. Can't you see that? Andrea's crying. Your father's having trouble breathing." I cut her off. "I don't care about Andrea's tears. And I don't care about Dad's breathing problems. What I care about is getting my money back, $850,000 plus 8% interest. You promised me that my investment would secure my place here, and I'm not letting you forget it." The line went silent for a moment, and I could feel the tension on the other end. I could almost hear her scrambling for an excuse, but she didn't have one. "Not this time. I'm done, Mom," I said firmly. "I've done everything for this family, and you've repaid me by taking advantage of me. You've used my trust, my loyalty, and my money. So don't ask me to come home and pretend everything is fine. It's not." I hung up the phone without waiting for a response. My hands were shaking slightly, but I felt a sense of calm settling over me. I wasn't going to back down. Not now. I had worked too hard to get where I was, to let them manipulate me into accepting less than I deserved. I wasn't going to be their scapegoat anymore. Over the next few days, the pressure from my family only increased. My father left more voicemails, begging me to reconsider. Andrea called me in a panic, accusing me of destroying everything they had worked for. They were scrambling, trying to find a way out of this mess, but they weren't going to win. Not this time. I couldn't shake the feeling that they thought I would just give in, that I would fall back into the role they had forced me into for so long, the one where I always did the right thing, where I sacrificed for the sake of family, where I let them take whatever they wanted without ever demanding anything in return. But that person didn't exist anymore. That girl was gone. Rachel and I worked tirelessly, preparing for the next step. The demand letter had already been sent, but I knew it was only a matter of time before they would try to push back. They would claim they couldn't afford to pay me back, that they didn't have the liquidity to meet my demands. But I wasn't buying it. I had already seen the lavish expenses they had incurred, the ways they had hidden their misuse of my money. This wasn't a liquidity issue, it was a choice. They had chosen to prioritize their own comfort over the vineyard, over their promises to me. By the time the meeting with the lawyer came around, I was ready. My resolve had hardened. I knew what I was fighting for. I wasn't just fighting for my money anymore. I was fighting for the respect I had never gotten from them, for the acknowledgement of everything I had done to save them. I wasn't just going to walk away from this empty-handed. When my parents finally called to arrange a meeting, I agreed, but only on my terms. No more empty promises, no more pretending everything was fine. I was done with that. This time, they would have to face the reality of what they had done, and they would have to pay the price. If they didn't want to honor the promises they had made, they could deal with the consequences. I took a deep breath as I walked into that meeting, the weight of everything I had been through bearing down on me. But I didn't falter. I had the truth on my side, and I would not back down. I knew things were escalating when I walked into the cafe to meet with Michael. He had been the accountant for River's Edge Vineyard for years, and although I didn't trust him completely, I was starting to wonder if he was one of the few people who wasn't completely complicit in my family's lies. He was sitting at a corner table, his eyes darting nervously as I approached. When he saw me, he immediately looked around to make sure no one was paying attention. My stomach twisted, something wasn't right. "Michael," the first said, trying to keep my voice calm, even though the nervousness in my chest was threatening to show. "What's going on?" He looked at me with a mixture of guilt and urgency. He wasn't the kind of guy who would easily get rattled, but today, it was obvious. He was uneasy. "I've been reviewing the books, Jessica. I don't think you understand the full extent of what they've done." I sat down across from him, my mind racing. My heart was pounding in my chest, but I didn't show it. I had come this far, one couldn't lose my nerve now. "What do you mean? What are they hiding?" Michael hesitated, then slid a thick folder across the table toward me. "Take a look at this," he said, his voice low, almost apologetic. "You need to see it for yourself." I opened the folder and started scanning the pages. The financial records were a mess, completely inconsistent. What struck me immediately were the entries for personal expenses that had been listed as business costs. The new Mercedes they had bought? It was marked as a delivery vehicle. That expensive trip to Tuscany? Listed under marketing expenses. My blood ran cold as I realized just how deep this went. My $850,000 hadn't just been used to save the vineyard, it had been funneled into their personal luxuries, things that had nothing to do with the business. And to make it worse, they had tried to cover it up. Michael's voice broke through my thoughts. "They've been transferring vineyard assets into a new company, Rivers Edge Holdings, LLC. It's all being hidden under that name. The original company you invested in? It's being hollowed out." His words hit me like a punch in the stomach. "Jessica, they've been planning this for months. They're setting you up to fail." I froze, my hands shaking slightly as I clutched the papers. This was worse than I had imagined. They weren't just treating me like I didn't matter. They were actively working to erase any claim I had to the vineyard. It was all part of their plan, a plan I had no part in. They were stripping the vineyard bare, and I was left holding the empty promises they had made. "This is fraud," I whispered, my voice tight with a mixture of disbelief and fury. "They're trying to steal from me." Michael nodded grimly. "I know. That's why I couldn't just stay silent. I've already started looking for another job. I can't be associated with this kind of manipulation, but I'm willing to help you if you want to take them down." I looked at him, the weight of everything I had learned crashing down on me. Part of me wanted to walk away, to pretend like I hadn't seen any of this. But I couldn't. Not after everything they had done to me. I wasn't going to let them win. I closed the folder and looked at Michael with determination in my eyes. "I'm not walking away. Not now. I want everything they've taken from me, Michael. And if they refuse to give it back, we go public. We take them down. I want my investment back, and I'm going to make sure they understand that." Michael nodded, his expression shifting from guilt to something closer to admiration. "I'll help you. We'll get the evidence we need. But be prepared, they won't go down without a fight. And they'll try to make you look like the bad guy." I nodded, steeling myself. I had already been the bad guy in their eyes for far too long, but now it was their turn. Now it was time to show them what it felt like to lose everything they had taken for granted. As I left the cafe, my mind was already racing with the next steps. I had the evidence now. I had the proof that my family had been manipulating me, using me, lying to me, and I wasn't going to let them get away with it. The next day, I called Rachel. I could feel the intensity building in my chest, but I forced myself to stay calm. "We've got them," I said, my voice steady. "I have everything we need. Michael has given me the proof. They've been embezzling, hiding assets, and using my money for their own luxuries." Rachel's voice was crisp, businesslike. "Good! Now we make them pay. We'll send them a demand letter. No more games. It's time for them to face the consequences." I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, but it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. This was just the beginning. I was going to fight back with everything I had. They had thought they could use me, manipulate me, break me, but they were wrong. Now they were going to see what happens when you push someone too far. I wasn't just fighting for money anymore. I was fighting for my dignity. I was fighting for my future. And this time, I wasn't going to lose. The demand letter was sent later that afternoon, and by the time I laid my head down that night, I knew the storm was coming. My family would fight tooth and nail to keep what they had taken from me. But it was too late. The wheels were in motion now, and I wasn't backing down. As the days passed, the calls from my family started coming in more frequently, each one more frantic than the last. But I didn't answer. I had made my decision. There was no going back. This was my fight now, and I was ready. Whatever happened next, I was going to take them down piece by piece, lie by lie, until I had nothing left to lose. This wasn't just about money. It was about justice, and I was going to make sure they understood that. I sat in the dimly lit corner of my apartment, my fingers hovering over the keyboard as I stared at the screen, the demand letter open in front of me. The weight of everything I had just done was slowly sinking in. I had sent it officially. The letter that would change everything. The one that would force my family to face the consequences of what they'd done. I could feel the tension building inside me, but there was no turning back. The words were out there now. They couldn't be taken back, no matter how much they begged. And they would beg. I knew that. I wasn't naive. I had seen this pattern before. My parents, my sister, when things got tough, they would beg for mercy, cry, make it all about family. But not this time. This time I was done. Done being the responsible one, the one who always took the fall. Done being the one who sacrificed everything for the people who were supposed to care about me the most, only to have them turn their backs when the going got rough. The phone rang, and I almost didn't pick it up. But I knew it was inevitable. They were going to try to guilt me into backing down. It was my mother. Of course it was. Her voice was soft, but there was a sharp edge to it that I hadn't heard before, a desperation that made my heart beat a little faster. Jessica, please. We need to talk. Your father is having a meltdown. You can't do this. You're going to destroy everything we've built. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to remain calm. Destroy everything you've built? I asked, my voice cold but controlled. What about everything I've built, Mom? What about all the years I spent working to save River's Edge, only for you to turn around and throw me out like I'm nothing? What about the promises you made to me? There was silence on the other end, and for a moment, I wondered if she was going to try to talk over me, to smooth things over, like she always did. But this time, she didn't. When she spoke again, her voice was strained, almost pleading. You don't understand, Jessica. This is bigger than money. This is about the family. We've always supported you. We've always been there for you, I laughed, a bitter laugh that I couldn't stop. You've always been there for me? Are you serious, Mom? The only time you've been there for me is when you needed something. When you needed my money. When you needed me to bail you out of trouble. But when it came time to honor your word, when it came time to honor my contribution, you turned your back. Don't try to make this about family. This is about you taking advantage of me. This is about you ignoring the deal you made, the promise you gave me. Her voice shook when she responded. You don't mean that. This isn't you. You're just upset. But this isn't the way to handle things. You're tearing the family apart. Tearing the family apart? The irony of it hit me hard. It wasn't me who was tearing the family apart. It was them. They were the ones who had broken every promise, who had taken advantage of my trust, who had manipulated me for years. I wasn't the one destroying this family. I was the one who had been holding it together for as long as I could, while they pretended like everything was fine. I've had enough, Mom, I said, my voice unwavering now. I'm done. I've been your scapegoat for too long. You've used me, and I'm not going to let you keep doing it. I'm not going to sit here and watch you destroy everything I've worked for just so you can save face. I want my investment back, every penny plus interest. And if you don't give it to me, I'm going public. I'll make sure everyone knows what you've done. There was a long silence after I spoke, and I could hear her on the other end of the line, probably struggling to find the right words to say, to manipulate me into coming home, to make it all feel like a misunderstanding. But I wasn't falling for it anymore. You've made your choice, I said, the words coming out clear and firm. And now, you'll have to live with the consequences. I'm not coming back. Not until you make this right. I hung up the phone, feeling a mix of anger and relief. I had said what needed to be said. But now, I felt like I was holding my breath, waiting for the storm to hit. I knew it wasn't over. Not yet? My family wasn't going to roll over and just accept defeat. They would fight back. They would fight dirty. I had to be ready for whatever they threw at me next. The next few days were a blur. My inbox was flooded with emails from Andrea, accusing me of ruining everything, telling me that I was acting out of spite, that I was tearing the family apart. My phone was constantly ringing with calls from my father, his voice full of anger and frustration, trying to convince me that we could work this out if I just came home and talked. But I didn't want to talk. There was nothing left to say. They had made their choice, and now I had to make mine. And that meant standing firm. I wasn't going to let them walk all over me anymore. I wasn't going to let them use my loyalty against me. I had worked too hard, sacrificed too much to let them take it all away. The turning point came when I received a call from Rachel, her voice tense with excitement. "They're scrambling," she said, her words coming fast. "Your family's lawyer is calling every bank in the area, trying to secure an emergency loan. They know they're in deep, but it's too late. You've got them on the ropes." The realization hit me all at once. I had them cornered. They were desperate, trying to salvage what they could, but they knew they couldn't keep running from the truth. They had thought they could hide behind their lies, their money, their connections. But I wasn't backing down anymore. I wasn't going to let them win. I sat back, taking a deep breath. This was it. The moment I had been waiting for. I had made my move. Now, it was time to see if they would do the right thing or if they would keep fighting until they had nothing left. The days following my call with Rachel felt like a countdown, a clock ticking louder and louder as the deadline loomed closer. I had sent the demand letter and my family had tried to fight back, but the truth was now out there. My $850,000 had been used for everything but saving the vineyard. And I had the proof. I could feel the weight of it in my bones. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about everything they had taken from me, everything they had stolen. I couldn't back down. Not now. But as much as I wanted to hold on to the power I had gained, there was a small part of me, buried deep inside, that wondered if this was the right thing to do. Every call from my mother, every angry text from Andrea, it all felt like a tug of war in my chest. The guilt kept creeping in, pulling at my resolve, reminding me of everything I had sacrificed for them. But I couldn't let myself be weak again. I had learned the hard way that sometimes you have to be your own hero, even when it means breaking things you wish you could keep whole. One afternoon, about 2 weeks after sending the letter, I received an unexpected call. It was from my father. My stomach turned as I saw his name flash on the screen. I wasn't ready to hear him beg again, wasn't ready to listen to his excuses. But part of me stupidly still wanted to. I answered, my voice cool but guarded. "What is it, Dad?" There was a long pause before he spoke. "Jessica, we need to talk. Please, just hear me out. Your mother and I were willing to come to the table. We'll make things right. We'll pay you back, plus the interest. We can work something out." My pulse quickened, and I couldn't help but feel a surge of hope. A part of me wanted to believe that they would do the right thing, that they would finally honor the promises they had made. But then the reality of everything we had been through crashed down on me. They had already betrayed me once. Could I really trust them again? "I've heard that before," I replied. my voice steady but cold. You've made promises, and each time, you've broken them. Why should I believe you now? His voice softened, almost pleading. Jessica, this isn't easy for us. It wasn't easy for me to admit how much we've messed up. But we're family. We can fix this. Please, just come home. Let's talk face to face. My heart was hammering in my chest, but I forced myself to remain calm. They had pushed me to the edge, and I couldn't let my emotions get the best of me now. I've already made up my mind. I'm not coming home, and I'm not backing down. You promised me something, and I'm not going to let you sweep it under the rug just because things are getting difficult for you. I could hear him taking a deep breath on the other end of the line. You're making a mistake, Jessica. You're going to ruin your future. Our future, everything. I've already ruined my future by trusting you, I said, the words coming out sharper than I intended. I've spent years working to build something here, and you used me to save your own skin. I'm done being the fall guy. There was a long silence before he spoke again, his tone shifting from desperation to something colder. You don't get it, Jessica. You're pushing us into a corner. We've already had to take out loans just to cover what you're asking for. If you file that lawsuit, it's not just going to be the vineyard at risk. It's everything. The workers, the distributors, they'll all suffer. I felt my chest tighten. This was what they always did, wasn't it? They tried to make me feel guilty. They tried to shift the blame onto me, as though I was the one destroying everything. As if I wasn't the one who had sacrificed everything to save them. You're the ones who put everyone at risk, I snapped. You're the ones who stole my money. Don't try to make this about them. This is about what's right. There was another pause, but this time I didn't give him the chance to speak. I'm done, Dad. I've given you every chance to make it right. I'm done being the one who cleans up your mess. I hung up the phone, my hands shaking slightly as I placed it on the table. My heart was still racing, the adrenaline pumping through my veins. This wasn't easy. It wasn't easy to cut them off, to let go of the hope that maybe, just maybe, they would finally do the right thing. But I couldn't keep waiting for them to change. I had to change. I had to take control of my life, of my future, and stop letting them control the narrative. That night, I found myself sitting in front of my laptop, drafting the next move. I had already sent the demand letter, but I wasn't about to just wait and see if they would come through. I had to take this to the next level. If they wouldn't give me what I was owed willingly, I would make them. I was done being afraid. I was done being the daughter who just let things slide for the sake of peace. I was ready to fight for what was mine. The next morning, I went to Rachel's office, feeling more confident than I had in weeks. When I walked in, she looked up and gave me a small, knowing smile. You're looking like someone who's ready to win, she said, her eyes sharp with the same determination. I felt surging through me. I'm ready, I said, sitting down across from her. It's time to take this to court. Rachel didn't hesitate. She immediately started pulling up the necessary documents, getting everything in place for the next phase of the battle. As she worked, I sat back and let the reality of it all sink in. I was about to go head-to-head with my family, but I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. I'll make sure they know this isn't just about money, I said, my voice low but firm. This is about making them face the consequences of their actions. They've taken everything from me, and now it's time for them to pay. Rachel nodded, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she finalized the paperwork. You've got this, she said, her voice filled with confidence. I took a deep breath. I know I do. I had come this far, and I wasn't going to stop now. The fight wasn't over, but it had just become real, and I was ready for whatever came next. The hours before the meeting felt like I was holding my breath, waiting for something big to happen, knowing it was going to change everything. I had finally made up my mind. I was no longer the obedient daughter who stayed silent for the sake of family peace. No, not anymore. I had been pushed too far, and now I was ready to take the fight to the next level. The clock was ticking, and I knew that soon my family would have to face the reality of what they had done. I arrived at the law office early, as I always did when I was determined. Rachel was already there, her eyes sharp with purpose. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. She got straight to work, and I appreciated that about her. I had no time to waste. Every moment felt like I was walking a tightrope, and if I made one wrong move, everything could come crashing down. But that was the price of doing what I was doing. I wasn't afraid anymore. It wasn't just about the money. It was about dignity, about the years I had spent being overlooked, manipulated, and taken for granted. Rachel set out the documents on the table, the stack of legal papers looking almost harmless. But I knew better. The demand letter had already been sent, and now we were taking the next step, filing a lawsuit. A part of me wanted to avoid it, to keep hoping that my family would come to their senses and make things right. But I knew that hope was long gone. They had crossed a line that I couldn't ignore anymore. I couldn't go back to being the person they wanted me to be, the one who always put them first, no matter how much it cost me. "You're ready for this?" Rachel asked, looking up at me as she shuffled the papers. She could see it in my face, the fire I hadn't had in so long. "I just want to make sure you know what you're stepping into. Once we file this, there's no turning back." I took a deep breath, nodding. "I'm ready." "I have to do this. For me. For everything I've sacrificed." Rachel smiled, her sharp eyes softening just a little. "Then let's get it done." We filed the papers, and the process moved faster than I had expected. But the days that followed weren't as simple as I thought they would be. The calls from my parents grew more desperate, more frantic. They were trying every angle, trying to guilt me into backing down, telling me how much this was hurting them, how much they had sacrificed for me over the years. But it didn't matter anymore. It didn't matter that they had been my family. They had lied to me. They had used me. And I wasn't going to let them twist the narrative to make me the villain. One evening, my father called again. His voice sounded strained, as though he had been crying or yelling. He wasn't the kind of man who ever showed his emotions. So it threw me off. "Jessica, please? Your mother and your mother's beside herself. She's asking you to come home, to just sit down and talk this through. We can make it right, honey. You can't destroy this family." I could hear the desperation in his voice, and for a split second, I almost faltered. But I caught myself. I had come too far. This wasn't just about the vineyard, it was about me finally standing up for myself, for the years of being ignored, of being treated like a second-class citizen in my own family. "I'm not destroying the family, Dad," I said, my voice cold and steady. "You're the one who did that when you chose Andrea over me. You're the one who lied to me, took my money, and made me think I was a fool for trusting you. Jessica, please," he begged, his voice softening. "I'm not asking for much. Just come home. We'll talk. We'll figure this out together." I shook my head, even though I knew he couldn't see me. "I've already made my decision, Dad. I'm done talking. You promised me something, and I'm not letting you take it back. I want my money back. Every penny. You took what wasn't yours, and now you're going to pay for it." There was a long pause, and I could almost hear the frustration boiling in him. I knew this wasn't going the way he had hoped. He thought I would break. He thought I would soften when I heard him sound so desperate, so torn apart, but I wasn't going to fall for it. Not anymore. Finally, he spoke, his voice quiet, almost resigned. "You've made your choice, Jessica. But just know this isn't just going to hurt you. It's going to destroy everything we've worked for." I let his words hang in the air for a moment. "No, Dad, you did that. You're the one who threw everything away when you thought you could take advantage of me." I hung up before he could say anything else, the finality of it settling over me like a heavy weight. I had made my choice, and now I had to stick to it. I wasn't going to back down. The days that followed felt like I was walking through a storm. My family tried everything to get me to change my mind. My mother sent me texts pleading with me to come home, to sit down with them and fix things. Andrea called again, threatening me with legal action if I didn't stop the lawsuit. But nothing fazed me. I wasn't going to let them win. I wasn't going to let them make me feel like I was the one in the wrong. The real shock came a few days later when I got a call from Michael, the family accountant. His voice was tense, and I could tell something was off. "Jessica, you need to listen to me. I've been reviewing the financial records again, and there's something you need to know. They've started transferring assets out of River's Edge into a new company. They're hiding everything, and they're doing it fast. You're running out of time." My heart dropped into my stomach. They were trying to cover their tracks, trying to make it impossible for me to reclaim what was rightfully mine. They were doing everything they could to protect themselves, but they hadn't counted on me. They hadn't counted on me not giving up. I called Rachel immediately. "They're hiding everything. We need to act fast. We can't let them get away with this." "I've got it covered," she said, her voice steady and confident. "We're filing an amended complaint. We'll subpoena the records and we'll make sure they don't get away with this." I felt a rush of adrenaline. This was it. The moment I had been waiting for. I wasn't just fighting for money anymore. I was fighting to expose them, to show the world who they really were. And I wasn't going to stop until they had to face the consequences. When I sat down to draft the amended complaint, I felt a sense of satisfaction wash over me. This wasn't just a legal battle anymore. This was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and showing them that I wasn't the one who had lost. They were. I knew it wasn't over yet. The fight was far from finished. But as I sat in that office, preparing to send the documents off, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Empowered. It was a strange feeling, but I had finally taken control, and there was no turning back now. The morning after I signed the amended complaint felt like the calm before a storm. My stomach was tied in knots, but there was an undeniable sense of satisfaction lingering in the back of my mind. For the first time in what felt like forever, I was no longer standing in the shadows. I wasn't the daughter who just took it all, who gave in to the manipulation and deceit. I had drawn a line in the sand, and I wasn't backing down. My family had pushed me into a corner, and now it was their turn to face the consequences of their actions. Rachel had assured me that the process was moving forward, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. The lawsuits, the subpoenas, the financial records, they were all in motion. But I knew my family wasn't going to give up without a fight. They would try to manipulate the situation, try to spin the narrative so they could keep their grip on River's Edge Vineyard. But I was done letting them control the story. The days dragged on, each one filled with the mounting pressure of the battle I had started. My phone buzzed constantly. Messages from my parents, from Andrea, all of them begging me to reconsider, to come home, to talk this through as a family. But there was nothing left to talk about. They had made their choices. They had betrayed me, lied to me, and now I had the power to expose them for what they really were. It wasn't easy, though. The guilt still crept in, especially when I heard my father's voice breaking through the phone calls. He had always been the strong one, the one who never showed vulnerability. But now, he was begging. It was almost too much to bear. Almost. But I reminded myself of everything I had been through, everything I had sacrificed to keep the vineyard alive. My money, my time, my trust. I had given everything, and they had given me nothing in return. That night, I sat in front of my laptop, reviewing the latest legal documents Rachel had sent over. My eyes scanned the pages as I thought back on everything that had led me to this point. The phone calls, the lies, the promises broken over and over again. It all seemed so clear now, like I had been walking around in a fog for years, not really seeing the truth. But now, I had the clarity I needed. I wasn't going to let them win. As I clicked through the files, I saw the bank records once again. They were proof of everything, every purchase, every withdrawal, every deceitful transaction. The Mercedes, the vacation to Tuscany, the new tasting room that was supposed to save the vineyard, but had been built with money that wasn't theirs to spend. It was all there in black and white. and it made my blood boil all over again. I closed my laptop with a snap, the sound echoing in the otherwise silent room. The decision was made. I couldn't keep going back and forth with myself. I couldn't let their lies be the last word. My family had taken everything from me, and now I was going to take it back. The next morning, I met Rachel at her office. She looked up from the stack of papers as I walked in, and there was a small, approving smile on her face. "You're holding up well," she said. "I can tell you're ready for the next phase of this." I nodded, even though my heart was still racing. "I'm done waiting. It's time to go to court. I've had enough of their excuses." Rachel went over the next steps with me, explaining how we would proceed with the lawsuit. She had the evidence. We had the records. We had everything we needed to expose my family for the fraud they had committed. But as we talked, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. The anticipation, the fear that had been gnawing at me for weeks, it started to fade. This was the moment. There was no more room for doubt. A few days later, I sat at my kitchen table, my phone buzzing constantly, calls from my parents, messages from Andrea. They were desperate, trying to make me change my mind. They didn't want this to go public. They didn't want the world to know what they had done. But I wasn't about to let them control me anymore. I had given them chance after chance, and they had used every single one. Now, it was my turn. I had received the subpoena for their financial records, and that was the moment I realized just how far they were willing to go to protect their secrets. They were pulling every string they had, trying to secure an emergency loan, trying to hide the assets they had siphoned off into that new LLC. But it didn't matter. I had the proof. The lies, the manipulation, it was all coming to light, and there was no turning back for them. The day of the hearing arrived, and I sat in the courthouse, my hands gripping the armrests of the chair. My heart was racing, my palms sweating, but I refused to let the fear take over. This was the moment that would change everything. This was the moment where I would make them answer for what they had done. When the judge called the case, I stood up, my knees shaking only slightly. The room was filled with tense energy, the air thick with anticipation. My parents and Andrea sat across from me, their faces tense, their eyes darting nervously. They knew what was coming, and it was clear they were trying to stay calm, trying to look confident. But it was too late for that. The truth was out. They couldn't hide anymore. The proceedings were long, and at times it felt like the walls were closing in on me. My parents' lawyer tried to poke holes in the case, tried to twist the facts to make it seem like they hadn't done anything wrong. But with each piece of evidence Rachel presented, with each financial record that came to light, their arguments started to crumble. My heart was pounding in my chest, but I stayed focused. I knew this was it. I knew I had to stay strong. Finally, after what felt like hours, the judge spoke. His words were simple, but they hit like a freight train. Based on the evidence presented, the court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Jessica Williams. It took a moment for the words to sink in. I had won. The battle was over. I had reclaimed what was mine. I had stood up for myself when no one else would. And now I was getting my justice. My parents looked stunned. Andrea's face was pale, her eyes wide with disbelief. For the first time in my life, I felt no sympathy for them. I had spent so long trying to fix things, trying to make everything okay for everyone else. But today, I was finally free. As I walked out of the courtroom, I took a deep breath, the weight that had been pressing down on me for so long finally lifting. I had done it. I had fought for what was right, and now I was free to move on. The world felt different now, like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I wasn't tied to them anymore. I didn't need their approval, their manipulation, their lies. I had built something of my own, and I was going to keep building. The road ahead wasn't easy, but it was mine, and I was ready to walk it. As I drove away from the courthouse, I thought about what was next. The vineyard was behind me now, but I wasn't done. I had a future to build, a legacy to create. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had control over my life again, I wasn't the daughter anymore. I was Jessica Williams, and I had just taken my life back. After all the lies, the manipulation, the broken promises, it was time to expose everything. You won't believe what happened next. I finally had the power to make them pay. Was it worth it? Did I get everything I deserved? Or did they pull a fast one at the last minute? Stay tuned to find out and let me know what you think. I want to hear if you think I made the right choice. Comment below now. The lesson I learned from everything I went through is simple. Don't let anyone take advantage of you, not even family. I spent years putting others first, sacrificing my own happiness, and letting people manipulate me because of the family bond. But in the end, I realized that my worth doesn't depend on their approval or promises. If you're not getting what you deserve, speak up. Stand your ground. Life doesn't wait, and you can't afford to let anyone define your worth. Trust yourself. You're stronger than you think. Never settle for less than what you've earned.